The day Sarah knocked on my door, her face half hidden by a scarf despite the summer heat, I had no idea that simple question would unravel both our lives and stitch them back together in ways neither of us could have imagined. Her voice trembled as she asked, "Am I still pretty?" revealing the fresh surgical scars she'd been hiding. What happened in the months that followed taught me more about beauty, courage, and human connection than my 40 years on this earth ever had. If you're touched by this story, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. Your support helps share these real moments of human connection that remind us we're never truly alone in our struggles. I'd known Sarah Campbell as the gorgeous woman from 4B for the 3 years we'd been neighbors in Oakwood Apartments. She was the kind of beautiful that turned heads without trying, tall with chestnut hair that caught the sunlight, always impeccably dressed for her job as a pharmaceutical sales rep. We'd exchange pleasantries at the mailboxes or nod in the elevator, but our conversations never ventured beyond weather comments and complaints about the building's temperamental heating system. That April afternoon changed everything. I opened my door to find Sarah standing there, sunglasses perched on her nose despite the hallway's dim lighting. Even with half her face covered, I could tell something was wrong. Her normally perfect posture was slightly hunched, protective. "Mike," she said, using my name for perhaps the first time. "Can I come in for a minute?" I stepped aside, surprised by the request. My apartment wasn't ready for visitors, dishes in the sink, manuscripts scattered across every surface. As a freelance editor working from home, housekeeping often fell to the bottom of my priority list. "Sorry about the mess," I mumbled, hastily clearing books from the couch. Sarah didn't seem to notice. She stood in the middle of my living room, hands fidgeting with the edge of her scarf. When she finally removed her sunglasses, I saw her eyes were red-rimmed from crying. "I had surgery last week," she said without preamble. "Skin cancer. Basal cell carcinoma on my cheek and jaw." My stomach dropped. "Sarah, I'm so sorry." She nodded, then slowly unwound the scarf. The left side of her face bore a 6-inch curved scar from her ear down along her jawline, still angry and red against her pale skin. The surgeon had done a neat job, but there was no hiding the fact that her face had been altered. "My follow-up appointment is tomorrow," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "The doctor says I'm healing well, but..." Her voice cracked. "I've been avoiding mirrors. I need someone to be honest with me. Am I still pretty?" The vulnerability in her question knocked the wind out of me. Here was this woman I'd always seen as untouchably perfect, standing in my cluttered apartment asking for reassurance I wasn't qualified to give. But looking at her, really looking, I saw beauty in her courage, in the strength it took to show her wounds to a virtual stranger. "Yes," I said simply. "You're beautiful, Sarah." She burst into tears. That moment could have been awkward, but instead, it became the foundation of something neither of us expected. I made tea while Sarah composed herself, and somehow we ended up talking for hours. Not just about her diagnosis and surgery, but about everything: her childhood in rural Minnesota, my failed marriage, her passion for photography she'd abandoned for her corporate career, my dreams of writing instead of just editing other people's words. "I haven't told anyone at work yet," she confessed. "My job is so appearance-focused. The company likes having attractive people representing their products to doctors." "That's ridiculous," I said. "You're still the same qualified professional." She smiled sadly. "You'd be surprised how much being conventionally attractive has opened doors for me. I'm terrified of what happens when that changes." As the weeks passed, Sarah and I fell into a routine. Coffee in my apartment before work, occasional dinners where I'd cook while she talked about her day. She'd been right about her job, her manager had concerns about her client-facing role after seeing her scar. The same colleagues who once invited her to every happy hour suddenly had excuses when she suggested getting together. "It's like I've become invisible," she said one evening in May, pushing pasta around her plate. "Or worse, like I make people uncomfortable now." "Their loss," I said, though I knew my words were small comfort against the daily reminders of how superficial many human connections truly are. The turning point came in June, when Sarah's company hosted their annual sales conference. She'd been dreading it for weeks, knowing she'd face hundreds of colleagues who hadn't seen her since the surgery. "I could go with you," I offered impulsively one evening. "As your plus one." She looked up, surprised. "It's in Chicago. For 3 days." "I can work from anywhere," I shrugged. "Besides, I've never been to Chicago." That's how I found myself in a hotel ballroom surrounded by pharmaceutical sales representatives, watching Sarah navigate a sea of reactions to her changed appearance. Some people were wonderfully kind. Others barely concealed their shock or pity. A few actually avoided her entirely. During the awards dinner, Sarah was passed over for the top sales recognition despite having the highest numbers in her division. When the regional director later drunkenly suggested she consider a less visible role, I watched something shift in her expression. Back in our adjoining hotel rooms, Sarah didn't cry as I'd expected. Instead, she pulled out her laptop and stayed up all night building a website. By morning, she had created Still Pretty, a platform for sharing stories of people whose appearances had been changed by illness, accident, or surgery. "I'm done letting other people define my worth," she said, eyes bright with purpose rather than tears. "And I bet I'm not the only one." She posted a simple selfie, no filter, no strategic angle to hide her scar, with her story. Then she shared the link on her social media accounts before we headed to the final day of the conference. By the time we boarded our flight home that evening, her post had been shared over 1,000 times. Her inbox was flooded with messages from people wanting to share their own stories. What began as a moment of vulnerability in my apartment transformed into a movement. Over the next few months, Sarah reduced her hours at the pharmaceutical company to focus on building Still Pretty. She organized photography sessions for people with visible differences, creating portraits that captured their true beauty. She started a podcast interviewing doctors, psychologists, and individuals about the psychological impact of appearance changes. I found myself drawn deeper into her project, editing stories for the website, helping coordinate events. My own work took a backseat as I discovered a purpose that felt more meaningful than anything I'd done before. By December, Still Pretty had been featured in national magazines. Sarah was invited to speak at medical conferences about patient psychological support after appearance-altering procedures. A major skincare company approached her about creating a foundation to fund reconstructive surgery for those who couldn't afford it. On New Year's Eve, we sat on my couch, the same one where she'd first shown me her scar, looking back on the whirlwind year. "I never thanked you properly," Sarah said, turning to face me. "For that day when I asked if I was still pretty." "I just told you the truth," I replied. She shook her head. "No, you did something much more important. You saw me, really saw me, when I felt invisible. You didn't look away when it would have been easier to." The clock ticked closer to midnight as we sat in comfortable silence. Sarah's scar had faded to a thin silver line, barely noticeable to anyone who wasn't looking for it. But more striking was how she carried herself now, with a confidence that came from somewhere deeper than physical appearance. "I have a confession," I said finally. "I always thought you were beautiful, even before I really knew you. But now—" I hesitated, suddenly nervous. "Now?" she prompted. "Now I know you're extraordinary." The kiss that followed wasn't a surprise to either of us. It felt like the natural conclusion to a story that had been writing itself all year. 2 years have passed since that first knock on my door. Still Pretty has grown into a non-profit organization supporting thousands of people through appearance changes. Sarah left her pharmaceutical job entirely, finding more fulfillment in the community she's built than she ever did in corporate success. As for me, I finally started writing my own stories instead of just editing others. My first novel, about a man whose life is transformed by an unexpected connection with his neighbor, will be published next spring. We moved in together last summer, into a sun-filled apartment with space for Sarah's photography studio and my writing desk. The framed photo in our entryway is from our first official date, both of us laughing, Sarah's scar visible but no longer the first thing anyone would notice about her radiant face. Sometimes I think about how easily we could have missed each other. If Sarah hadn't found the courage to knock on my door that day. If I'd given her the polite reassurance she thought she wanted instead of seeing the deeper question beneath her words. Life changes us all, leaving its marks on our bodies and hearts. The beauty isn't in remaining untouched by time and circumstance, it's in how we carry our scars, how we let them connect rather than separate us from each other. Sarah still occasionally asks me, with a smile that holds the memory of tears, "Am I still pretty?" And I always answer truthfully, "More beautiful every day." If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us continue sharing stories that remind us all of our shared humanity and the beauty that exists beyond appearances. Thank you for watching, and remember, true connection happens when we have the courage to be seen and the compassion to truly see others.